A blockbuster NFL trade might be brewing, and it could shake up both the league and college football in one move. Imagine this. Kyler Murray, a former #1 overall pick, shipped off to Cleveland. In return, none other than Shedeur Sanders, Coach Prime's son and one of the most talked about quarterbacks in college football right now. Sounds crazy, right? But this idea isn't just fan fiction anymore. Rumors of a potential quarterback swap have lit up Cleveland and Arizona media, and if even a fraction of it is true, it could change everything for the Browns, the Cardinals, and the future of Shedeur Sanders. Because here's the kicker. This isn't just football. This trade, if real, touches some of the NFL's most complicated storylines, from quarterback meltdowns to front office drama to the behind-the-scenes pressure that might be forcing one of college football's biggest names into the league before he's ready. So what's really going on here? Is this just internet noise or the first sign of a calculated power move? Let's break it all down. Not long after the rumors started circulating, Instagram began blowing up. A wild trade mock-up, originally posted by a fan page, suddenly started gaining traction across Cleveland and Arizona media circles. And the headline was so bold, so unexpected, you'd assume it was just clickbait. But then, Cleveland media members, including insiders with real connections to the Browns organization, began sharing the exact same post. The proposed trade? Kyler Murray to the Cleveland Browns. In exchange for Shedeur Sanders, a future third-round pick in 2026, and a second-round pick in 2027. No filters, no fluff, just that straight-up quarterback swap plus 2 future draft picks. And if that sounds reckless, it's because it kind of is. But here's where it gets interesting. The buzz wasn't just coming from random accounts trying to farm likes. This idea caught the eye of insiders actually covering the Browns, and they ran with it, specifically pointing at the idea that Cleveland could realistically pursue Kyler Murray in the seasons ahead. That nugget alone made people stop scrolling. Fans were bewildered. Why would Arizona give up on Murray now? Why would Cleveland take him? And what does Shedeur Sanders have to do with any of this? Well, let's connect the dots. For starters, Arizona seems to be nearing the end of the Kyler Murray experiment. Since his injury and everything that happened between him and Cardinals management, there's been an obvious tension. Reports suggest they're leaning toward moving on from him. Maybe not loudly, but behind closed doors, the conversations are happening. And here's the thing. Murray's contract becomes far less painful to move after the 2025 season. That happens to line up perfectly with the timing of this mock trade. Cleveland, on the other hand, is in yet another quarterback crisis. What else is new? Watson's situation is still unraveling, and no backup has shown consistent promise. So if they don't land a top pick over the next year or two, and the 2026 quarterback draft class is already being seen as weak, someone in that building is going to start panicking. Some say that panic may have already started. So who benefits? Under this mock scenario, Arizona dumps Kyler's contract, sets themselves up with a future QB in Shedeur Sanders who, like him or not, brings massive media attention and potential upside, and adds valuable draft capital for a team still rebuilding. If you've been watching the Cardinals lately, you know they're stacking picks already. This would fit that pattern. Now, from Cleveland's point of view, they take a swing, a huge swing. They bring in a young QB who's already proven he can win, when healthy, and whose dual threat ability maybe gives them the edge they've been missing for years. And if the current staff doesn't believe in Shedeur as a future franchise quarterback, they might see this as a fair trade, even giving up a few picks just to stabilize their team. But let's be clear, this is not a done deal. This is still in the realm of speculation and insider chatter. But that's what makes it so interesting, because wild ideas don't usually gain traction unless someone wants them out there. And right now, this rumor is doing laps in the media. Someone planted that seed for a reason. The fans are divided. Some Browns supporters are begging the front office not to repeat the mistakes of the past, while others are saying this might be the only shot left to salvage their quarterback situation. And over in Arizona, fans aren't exactly crying at the thought of losing Kyler. The relationship feels broken, and people are already fantasizing about what Shedeur plus picks could mean for their rebuild. But all of this also raises a huge question that nobody's really addressing yet. Would Shedeur Sanders even want to go to Cleveland? Because let's not forget, he's not just any player. He's the son of Deion Sanders. He's been built like a brand as much as a quarterback. And no offense to Cleveland, but it doesn't take much imagination to wonder if the Sanders family would push back against that situation, especially after their experience running things their way at Colorado. All that said, the speculation keeps growing. And now, with real insiders acknowledging it's not impossible, everyone's watching the Browns and Cardinals for any clue, any small comment that could confirm or deny what's coming next. But even if it's all smoke and mirrors right now, one thing is certain. This rumor just lit a match, and everyone's waiting to see how big the fire gets. To understand why a trade for Kyler Murray even makes sense for Cleveland, you've got to look at the bigger picture, because at a glance, it seems absurd. A team that made one of the riskiest quarterback trades in NFL history now wants to take on another high-priced quarterback with durability questions and media baggage? Sounds like madness. But for the Browns, it might actually be survival. Let's be real, Cleveland is desperate, and not just your usual desperation for a playoff spot or a better record. We're talking about an organization that has made decade after decade of poor decisions at the most important position on the field, quarterback. By now, it's practically part of the team's identity. Look at their recent track record. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be the guy. They gave up a haul of picks and handed him a $230 million fully guaranteed contract. But since arriving, Watson has looked inconsistent, injured, and untrustworthy, not just to fans, but reportedly even within the building. He's barely been on the field, and when he has played, it hasn't been pretty. Fast forward, and the Browns are now stuck between trying to stay competitive in a brutal AFC North, while holding a roster that's just good enough to win if they had a quarterback. That if is the whole problem. Nick Chubb went down. The O-line has regressed, and the defense can only carry them so far. So what do you do when you're built to win now, but your quarterback room is in shambles and there's no elite prospect coming up in your draft range? You get reckless. You get risky. You get Cleveland. And that's why a deal involving Kyler Murray, no matter how unconventional it sounds, starts to make twisted sense. The Browns don't want to spend another 3 or 4 years developing a prospect, waiting for stars to align. By the time that happens, the talent on their roster will have already peaked or moved on. Now here's where Shedeur Sanders enters the picture. According to everything we're seeing, Shedeur has barely been given a fair look by NFL scouts yet. He hasn't even officially declared for the draft, and yet he's already become one of the most polarizing names in college ball. Some scouts reportedly say he's not ready. But you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who isn't aware of him. He's a marketing machine. He's also performing under enormous pressure, carrying not only his own hopes, but the weight of his father's legacy at Colorado. The Browns allegedly looked at both Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel as potential future QB fits. But if that's true, and if they're the best available in Cleveland's draft range in 2026, it's a red flag. Because here's the thing, most scouts agree that the 2026 QB class is looking weak. The pipeline doesn't have that generational name, that guaranteed star. So, the Browns are staring down a possibility where their best options for a quarterback are roll the dice on a QB prospect who might not be NFL ready, overpay for a veteran with baggage, injuries, and attitude issues, try to clean the Deshaun Watson mess with a last assist trade like Kyler, and it's starting to look like option 3 may be the route they're exploring. Now, let's talk about the offensive line, because it's another piece of the desperation puzzle. Even if Shedeur did land in Cleveland, he'd be immediately handicapped by one of the worst pass-protecting O-lines in the league. And if you've watched him play at Colorado, you know exactly how much pressure impacts his performance. Without time to throw, even a great college QB can look average at the pro level. That's exactly what critics would jump on. See? He's not ready. But it wouldn't be the whole story, it'd just be Cleveland doing what Cleveland does best, setting up a player to fail. So from the outside looking in, this seems wild. But when you drill into the organizational panic, the aging roster, the Watson disaster still echoing through the locker room, the Kyler Murray rumor stops sounding crazy and starts sounding exactly like the kind of move this front office has made before. Desperation doesn't follow logic, it follows pressure. And right now, the Browns are under more pressure than they've admitted publicly. But here's where things get even messier. Because the guy Cleveland may be eyeing to save their season, he's got his own storm brewing in Arizona. And that's what we're diving into next. Whether you're a believer or a doubter, one thing is clear, Shedeur Sanders is not your average quarterback prospect. The name carries weight, the highlight reels generate buzz, and the last name? Well, that alone stirs up emotions, headlines, and doubters everywhere he goes. But the real question now, especially in the eyes of NFL executives, is this. Is Shedeur Sanders actually NFL ready, or just really good at looking the part? That debate has been raging louder as rumors swirl about a potential Kyler Murray trade involving Shedeur as the centerpiece. If this deal ever happens, or if Shedeur declares early, front offices will have to decide, is he a long-term franchise investment or just a name caught up in too much media hype? Let's break it down. First, the supporters. The people who believe Shedeur is absolutely ready for the next level point to a few key things. 1. His composure under pressure. From day one, Shedeur has carried himself like a professional, not just on the field, but in memes, interviews, even after losses. He still shows poise. 2. His production. Despite Colorado's shaky record, Shedeur has put up solid numbers, often behind one of the worst offensive lines in all of college football. He's shown pocket presence, he's delivered precise throws while getting hit, and he clearly understands protections and pre-snap adjustments, something most college QBs never even touch. And perhaps most importantly, Shedeur doesn't crack. In game after game, even when things go sideways, he doesn't collapse under pressure. But there's always the other side. Critics are quick to argue that Shedeur is not quite ready, and it's not just fan speculation. Some NFL scouts have either directly or indirectly shared that sentiment behind the scenes. So, why the hesitation? First off, his pocket style may not immediately translate to NFL speed. Yes, he's patient, but sometimes that patience turns into delay. With pros crashing the pocket at elite speed, what looks like calm under fire in college might become hesitation in the NFL. 2. His reliance on mechanics is both a strength and a red flag. When he has time, he looks textbook. Crisp footwork, clean throws, good delivery. But when the play breaks down, and in the NFL, it always breaks down, there's concern about whether he can consistently create out of structure, the way Mahomes, Stroud, or even Kyler can. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room, he's Deion Sanders' son. Whether you love Deion or hate him, there's no denying the influence that comes with that. That automatically puts Shedeur in a strange spot. Some GMs feel pressure to treat him differently. Others may resent the media attention and the potential extra baggage of the Sanders brand. Is that fair? No, but it's real. And all of this is without talking about potential landing spots. Let's be honest, dropping Shedeur into a franchise like Cleveland, that's not exactly a soft landing. If he gets thrown behind a broken O-line with a lukewarm coaching staff and sky-high expectations, what happens then? He fails? Or the media declares him a bust before he ever gets a real chance? Even Johnny Liquidator, who's mixed on Shedeur's status, had a valid point if you're saying Dylan Gabriel is NFL caliber. But Shedeur is not. Something doesn't add up, because the film tells a very different story. And if Shedeur truly isn't ready, then a bunch of guys currently being hyped should have the same red flag. The reality may be somewhere in the middle. Shedeur has NFL tools, no question. The arm, the brain, the accuracy, it's all there. What's unclear is his ceiling. Can he become a game winner in the pros? Or is his potential being maxed out in college? It also comes down to fit. If a team like the Browns expects him to walk in and save their season behind a bad offensive line, that says more about them than it does about Shedeur. No quarterback can survive chaos without strong infrastructure. And this is why people are seriously questioning the rumored trade. Would Arizona really want to build around Shedeur in the middle of a total franchise rebuild? Would Cleveland gamble their future on a young prospect before he even declares? And does Deion Sanders have any say behind the scenes that fans haven't heard about yet? We don't have all the answers. What we do know is this: Shedeur's name is already in trade talks with NFL veterans, and he hasn't played a single down in the league. That alone speaks to the strange, powerful, and polarizing force that follows him everywhere. Now, while Shedeur's draft future remains a mystery, there's another name in this story under even bigger scrutiny. And that's Kyler Murray, who might quietly be running out of time in Arizona. Kyler Murray was once untouchable, a #1 overall pick, a Heisman winner, the face of the Arizona Cardinals' future. Fast forward just a few seasons, and now his name is making its way into mock trades, rumors, and last chance narratives. So what happened? How did a franchise quarterback stock drop so fast? Let's start with the obvious injuries. Kyler tore his ACL in December 2022 and missed nearly a year of football, a devastating injury for any player. But for a quarterback whose game is built around quickness, agility, and explosive movement, that kind of setback is career-altering. Even after his return, many questioned whether he looked the same. The burst wasn't quite there. The pocket movement didn't look as sharp. And for a player who's never been known as a traditional drop-back passer, those athletic edges were everything. But that's not the full story. Even before the injury, cracks were starting to show in Arizona. Stories leaked about Kyler's leadership or lack of it. In one of the most damning moves by a team in recent memory, the Cardinals inserted a film study clause into Kyler's massive contract extension. That detail alone became national news. Fans roasted him, analysts questioned his commitment, and while the team eventually removed the clause after public backlash, the damage was done. You don't question a franchise QB's work ethic unless something's seriously off behind the scenes. And suddenly, Kyler Murray didn't seem so untouchable anymore. Then, the team began to implode. Head coach Cliff Kingsbury was fired, GM Steve Keim stepped down. The Cardinals began a full-scale rebuild with a new coach, new front office, and a clear plan to start from scratch. But Kyler? He was a leftover piece from the old regime. And when new leadership inherits a player with a giant contract and big questions, that's a recipe for an ugly divorce. It's no coincidence that insiders like Jeremy Fowler from ESPN are now reporting that Murray's future in Arizona is very much in doubt beyond the 2025 season. Fowler specifically mentioned the Browns, yes, the same team we discussed earlier, and the Jets as two organizations likely to have a QB opening just as Kyler's contract becomes easier to offload. Let's be clear, this is not fantasy football talk, these are conversations happening in NFL circles. Arizona has multiple draft picks, they're rebuilding slowly, and Kyler may not be the centerpiece they want moving forward. There's also the fact that Arizona is in possession of draft capital that could land them another top-tier prospect at QB in the next 1-2 years. So instead of waiting on Kyler to return to form and hoping he stays healthy, the Cardinals may decide to start fresh with someone younger, cheaper, and easier to build around. Which brings us full circle to Shedeur Sanders. If Arizona is truly done with Kyler, and the Browns are looking to offload draft picks to get a starting caliber QB, why wouldn't the Cardinals at least consider getting a young quarterback in return, one with upside, pedigree, and fan interest? Don't forget, in a rebuilding market like Arizona, having a marketable quarterback matters too. Shedeur comes with a built-in fan base, a headline-friendly last name, and the kind of modern branding that teams love, especially when they're struggling to sell hope to fans. But the big question is, would Kyler be worth it for Cleveland? Or is this just going to be another version of the Watson situation, high cost, big risks, and more chaos? That depends entirely on what version of Kyler Murray we're talking about. If we're talking about 2019-2021 Kyler, who posted over 3,500 passing yards each year, scrambled like prime Russell Wilson, and made defenses play 1-1 on 1-1, then yeah, a gamble like that could change everything for a team like the Browns. But if we're talking about post-injury Kyler, the one who's struggled with consistency, battled bad headlines, and carries $46 million a year on his contract, that's a much tougher sell. And don't forget, once a QB loses the locker room, it's hard to get it back. Kyler's aloof personality already rubbed guys the wrong way in Arizona. If that continues in a new locker room, it could be game over before it even starts. So here we are. Two quarterbacks, total opposites. Shedeur, the young, unproven but hype-heavy name from college. Kyler, the once-crowned star who may be on his way out. One falling from grace, the other trying to rise too soon. And both of them may be trading places. But before anything like that can happen, you've got to look at the decisions being made off the field. The kind that set the tone for entire franchises. Because behind every crazy trade rumor is a front office trying to erase a mistake. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable. The Kyler Shedeur chatter isn't just about talent or fit. It's about trust. And in Cleveland, trust usually lives or dies upstairs. For years, the Browns have sold fans on collaboration. Coach, GM, analytics, ownership, all rowing the same direction. It sounds smart, it sounds stable. But when the biggest gamble in franchise history didn't pay off, that word started to feel like a shield. Collaboration can spread ideas. It can also spread blame. That's why a clip making the rounds hit so hard. In it, Paul DePodesta, the Browns' longtime strategy chief and the face of the analytics wing, was pressed about the fallout from the Deshaun Watson trade. The question called the move objectively a failure and asked how he could assure a new organization that it wouldn't happen again. His answer was measured. Big swings are organizational decisions. Senior leaders own them all. He even joked about calling plays before admitting no one gets every decision right. In other words, yes, we missed. No, it wasn't just one person. To some, that sounded like accountability. To others, it sounded like a dodge. Either way, the message was clear. Cleveland's biggest moves aren't coming from one voice. They're the product of a room, a hierarchy, a mantra. And when a room misses big, pressure doesn't just rise, it multiplies. Now, layer in the noise around DePodesta's own future. Reports and posts have suggested he may be moving on, with one clip tied to an introductory event in Denver. The details are still murky, and not every outlet agrees on what's actually happening. But even the rumor of a key architect stepping away adds to a theme: instability. When the people who build the blueprint change mid-construction, the temptation is to grab whatever looks like a quick fix and hope it holds. That's the backdrop for the Kyler Murray whispers. If you're the Browns, you can pitch this move a dozen ways. You can say you're buying low on a former num.1 pick with Pro Bowl tape. You can frame it as correcting course from the Watson deal without fully tearing down the roster. You can sell Kyler's dual-threat advantage behind a scheme that needs a spark now, not 3 drafts from now. And if you don't believe Shedeur will be a day-one savior behind a shaky line, moving him in a package for a proven starter starts to sound pragmatic. But look closer, and it's the same psychology that got Cleveland here. The belief that one player, one swing, fixes everything. That mindset is intoxicating. It's also dangerous, especially with a fan base that's still raw from the last swing. This is why DePodesta's tone matters. "We own it" sounds noble. It also raises the stakes for the next move. Ownership wants results. The GM wants stability. The coach wants wins that buy time. Analytics wants probability on their side. And the city wants a quarterback they can believe in. That pressure radiates through every rumor, through every insider says, through every Instagram mock-up that suddenly feels a little too plausible. There's a football argument for Kyler. There's a business argument too. If the Watson cloud never fully clears, another star QB lets everyone pivot the narrative. New face, new chapter, fresh hope. The risk, of course, is obvious. If Kyler's best athletic traits don't fully return, if personality friction reappears in a new locker room, if the line can't protect him either, then the Browns aren't just repeating history, they're doubling down on it. And then there's Shedeur. Trading a young name with massive upside and enormous brand power is its own gamble. If he lands in a patient system, Arizona, for example, and grows into a legitimate starter while the Browns chew through another high-priced veteran, that's a storyline no front office wants pinned on them, especially not one trying to restore credibility. So where does this leave Cleveland? In a familiar spot, peering over the edge of another big swing, calculating risk in spreadsheets while feeling heat you can't model. The public doesn't want a slogan. It wants a plan that works. The locker room doesn't want noise. It wants stability. And the front office doesn't want another scar. It wants a win big enough to make the last one fade. Rumors suggest that's exactly why this Kyler talk won't die. It checks the boxes a pressured building reaches for. Star power, short runway to contention, a story change. The kind of move you make when the clock is loud and the margin for error is thin. But the pressure isn't just in Cleveland. There's another front in this saga, one that could accelerate everything around Shedeur's timeline and shake the board from 1,000 miles away. Because while the NFL churns through its usual chaos, Colorado has its own storm brewing. And it starts at the top. While the NFL whispers get louder, there's a different kind of noise coming out of Boulder, and it could ripple straight into Shedeur's timeline. In college football, instability doesn't stay put. It follows the head coach, it touches recruiting, it shakes donor confidence, and eventually it reaches the quarterback room. Lately, Colorado has been in the headlines for reasons that don't involve a scoreboard. Reports claim that athletic director Rick George, who not long ago was being celebrated for bold leadership, may be stepping down. The optics alone are jarring. One week defending the direction of the program, another week facing a potential exit. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. Even if you love Coach Prime, even if you believe in the build, you can't ignore the timing. It raises questions that go beyond football. Who's steering this long term? Who holds the real power in the room? And what happens to the plan when the architect changes mid-project? Around Colorado media, you can feel the shift. Some voices have turned sharply critical of Coach Prime, picking at staff changes, recruiting misses, and the volatility that comes with the transfer portal era. Others push back and say this is the cost of reinvention, the turbulence you accept when a program flips its identity overnight. Both can be true, but to recruits and players and to a quarterback with a national brand, the message looks mixed. Momentum thrives on clarity. Doubt thrives on noise. Here's the part most people outside the sport don't fully grasp. In college football, boosters and donors don't just influence the game, they shape the institution. Facilities, NIL funding, staff retention, almost every lever you need to compete is tied to people who want a say in how the program is run. When they're aligned, magic happens. When they're not, every week becomes a referendum. And when the AD seat gets wobbly, those levers start to move in unpredictable ways. That's where the Shedeur piece gets sensitive. If the leadership picture at Colorado is in flux, does that accelerate his timeline? Some fans speculate that the family could choose control over uncertainty move Shedeur to the next level, where the structure, for all its pressure, is at least defined. Others insist the opposite, that Coach Prime wants his son to take the time, keep refining, and return with a supporting cast that can protect him and showcase the tools everyone knows he has. Both outcomes are on the table, and neither is confirmed. There's another wrinkle. The brand around Shedeur is real national deals, massive social footprint, constant attention. That's power, but it's also weight. An AD change, local media friction, and a polarized national narrative can make the season feel like it's being played in a fishbowl. If you're the quarterback, every decision starts to feel like a statement. Stay and you're betting on the reboot. Leave and you're acknowledging the turbulence. Neither choice is simple, and both will be judged instantly. Zoom out, and the Boulder storm intersects with the NFL rumors in a very practical way. If Shedeur's timeline shifts forward, front offices recalibrate, Cleveland's calculus changes, Arizona's rebuild board changes. And here's a housekeeping note. The internet often skips. The only way a Kyler for Shedeur scenario ever becomes more than a meme is if a team actually holds Shedeur's NFL rights after a draft. That's why the timing matters so much. Until then, any swap is just a thought experiment fuel for conversation, not a blueprint on a GM's desk. Rumors suggest some insiders are intentionally floating scenarios to test fan reaction and gauge how aggressive certain franchises might be when the window opens. That happens more than people realize. Meanwhile, in Colorado, the immediate questions aren't hypothetical at all. Who replaces an AD if that move indeed becomes official? What's the NIL roadmap for the next cycle? Which assistants are locked in? How quickly can the offensive line be rebuilt so Shedeur isn't a weekly target? Fans see highlights, quarterbacks live the hits. And any family paying attention to quarterback longevity is going to look hard at protection and development, two things that get harder to promise when the top of the org chart is shifting. None of this means the Colorado project is doomed. It means programs in transition face headwinds that aren't always visible on Saturdays. It also means Shedeur's decision isn't just about stats or draft boards. It's about trust. Trust in the plan. Trust in the people. Trust that the next 12 months will build him up, not wear him down. If the AD question settles quickly and the internal alignment snaps back into place, the noise fades and the original plan can breathe. If it drags out, if the critiques sharpen, if donor patience thins, that's when timelines get moved up. Not because of panic, but because of risk management. And that brings us to the part almost no one wants to say out loud, the leverage game happening behind closed doors. The real pivot point in this saga may not be on a practice field at all. It's in boardrooms, war rooms, and NIL meetings where futures are priced, not just predicted. We need to talk about that next. Here's the part no one says out loud. This saga isn't just about throws, stats, or highlight reels. It's about leverage, the kind you can't measure on a scoreboard. The kind that gets built in boardrooms, alumni dinners, and quiet phone calls between decision makers who never tweet. Start with the trial balloons. When rumors like a Kyler Shedeur scenario start floating through local media and insider segments, it's rarely random. Teams, agents, and even third-party business partners will test the waters. They toss out an idea, watch the reaction, and read the room. Reports claim some within the Browns' orbit have kicked around contingency options if the current path stalls. On the Arizona side, insiders continue to hint that the franchise is open to reshaping its future around cheaper, younger contracts. None of this confirms a deal. It just shows you how feelers travel before phones ever ring. Now, the mechanics. A straight swap between an NFL veteran and a college quarterback can't happen. That's not how the league works. Shedeur would have to declare, get drafted, and then his rights could be moved. Or a team could draft him with the intent of using his rights in a larger package. Everything before that is just hypotheticals and message board fuel. But if the timing lines up off-season windows, draft position, cap planning suddenly, what sounds like fiction turns into a plausible outline. And timing is the pressure point. Rumors suggest the Cardinals' appetite for a reset grows as Kyler's contract becomes easier to maneuver. Meanwhile, Cleveland's patience wears thin if the results don't match the investment. Put bluntly, the Browns can't afford another year of almost. That urgency is why fans keep seeing scenarios that look aggressive, even uncomfortable. Desperation doesn't whisper, it acts. There's also the money behind the scenes, NIL, endorsements, and brand calculus. Shedeur's college profile is rare. Estimates have placed his off-field value among the highest in the sport. That matters. If a college environment can offer stability, visibility, and strong NIL support, the stay one more year argument holds weight. If leadership gets muddy and the protection up front doesn't improve, the go now and control the narrative argument makes just as much sense. Neither choice is wrong. It's risk management disguised as career planning. Donor dynamics add another layer. Boosters don't just write checks, they influence direction. When an athletic department shifts at the top, those relationships get recalibrated. Some donors lean in, some pull back. That affects staff retention, NIL pools, and the ability to add the lineman and depth a quarterback needs to survive. Fans see Saturday. Players feel the 6 days before it. If the environment around Colorado steadies quickly, the original plan breathes. If it lingers, speculation about Shedeur's timeline will only grow. Then there's Arizona's calculus. A young quarterback, multiple picks, and a long runway can be more appealing than hoping a high-priced veteran returns to peak form. A rebuild loves cost control. It also loves attention. Whether fair or not, Shedeur carries both. Reports claim some in the league believe the Cardinals could be intrigued by a quarterback with a national following to anchor a fresh era. That's not a scouting grade, it's market reality. On Cleveland's side, the locker room question looms. Star power helps, but trust matters more. If the Browns make a move for Kyler, the first 30 days will define everything: install, leadership, buy-in. If it clicks, you can sell the pivot as bold and necessary. If it stutters, the echoes of past gambles get loud fast. That's the razor's edge. A pressured building lives on. Agents and advisors on all sides will shape the tempo. Kyler's camp will be positioning for fit, not just salary math. Shedeur's management is balancing brand, development, and opportunity. And the teams will do what they always do: run scenarios, rank outcomes, and leak selectively. Everyone in this story has the same objective: control the next headline before it controls you. Here's the quiet truth tucked under the noise. This rumor puts a spotlight on two different kinds of bet. One is the rehab bet wagering that a former #1 pick can reclaim that spark in a new system. The other is the projection bet banking on a young quarterback's ceiling before the league has a chance to grind him down. Both bets can make you look like a genius. Both can blow up a timeline. And that's why this moment feels bigger than a mock trade graphic. It's a crossroads. For Cleveland, a chance to rewrite the quarterback chapter without torching the roster. For Arizona, an opening to restart the clock and sell hope without saying the word rebuild too loudly. For Shedeur and Colorado, a decision that weighs trust in the plan against the pull of the next stage. None of this is confirmed. It's a constellation of signals, reports, whispers, and calculated nudges that might point to something, or might be nothing at all. But when this much smoke hangs in the air, smart people pay attention to wind direction. So where does it all lead? That depends on who blinks first and who's willing to stake their future on a move that could change everything overnight. So where does this leave us? 3 clocks are ticking at once. Cleveland needs stability now. Arizona is eyeing a clean reset. Colorado is wrestling with leadership noise that could nudge timelines. None of it is settled, and that's why this rumor refuses to die. Reports claim interest exists. Insiders hint at open doors. But nothing is confirmed. It's a board full of moving pieces. In the end, it's two very different bets. Kyler is the redemption play, pay big, win fast, change the story. Shedeur is the projection play, build the system, develop the talent, win later. Which path makes sense depends on who you trust and how much patience you have left. Would the Browns risk another massive swing? Would Arizona trade star power for cap control and a fresh face? And if the situation in Boulder wobbles, does that push Shedeur to take control of his path sooner? Rumors suggest it could, but that's still unverified. Your move. Drop your take below. Which bet would you make and why? We're tracking the quiet tells, quotes, contract windows, draft position. If smoke turns to fire, you'll see it here first. Keep notifications on. The next headline might flip the entire script overnight.